Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website, head over to squarespace.com/Paul Messner. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about inflatable sleeping pads. These two look very similar and both are really comfortable. However, this one will keep you warm below 10 degrees Celsius, whereas this one, you'll start to feel the cold at around 5 degrees Celsius. So today I'm going to talk some of the differences in technology that separate these two pads, and I'll try and simplify how some of the temperature ranges are measured. So at first glance, both of these pads look very similar. They're both 10 centimeters thick, and they are the two most comfortable sleeping pads that I've ever slept on. So the Ceta Summit Etherlite Extreme, that weighs in at 720 grams, has an R value of 6.2, and it has quite a hefty price tag of around £170. So next to it we've got the Trekology Aloft UL80 sleeping pad. So this is a much cheaper pad, fraction of the price at around £40, but it only has an R value of 1.6. So I know what you're thinking, what's the R value when it comes to a sleeping pad? So the R value of a sleeping pad in this particular instance is the measurement of thermal resistance of that particular bit of gear. So what that is actually measuring is the amount of heat loss from your body that goes down through to the ground, through the sleeping pad when you're pitched up in your tent or bivy bag or whatever. Or in real terms, it's just how warm the pad is going to keep you when you're pitched up in your tent. So the R value isn't really affected that much, whether it's horizontal baffles, longitudinal ones, or even these little air sprung pockets like on the Ceta Summit pads. So as a rule of thumb, sleeping pads, you can put them into three categories. You've got summer sleeping pads, 3-season sleeping pads, and then you've got your winter pads. So the summer sleeping pads typically have an R value between 1 and 2. So that would include the Trekology UL80, which is 1.6. And typically they're aimed at campers who aren't going to be camping below 5 degrees Celsius. Then you've got 3-season pads, which would fit down this gap here if I had one with me. They have an R value of between 2 and 4.5, and they are typically aimed at a range of 10 degrees Celsius and minus 10 degrees Celsius. But you do have to bear in mind that the R value of 2 is going to be aimed at the 10 degrees, whereas the 4.5 will be at the lower temperature range. So then we've got winter sleeping pads, and they have an R value of over 4.5. This particular pad has an R value of 6.2, which will have a comfort rating of around minus 11 to minus 15 degrees Celsius. So the actual R value calculations are very scientific, but when it comes to sleeping on one of these pads, an individual is going to feel the cold at different temperatures. So you're going to get hot sleepers like me, and you're going to get cold sleepers like Joe. So something that I'd be perfectly warm on, Joe's going to start and feel the chills. If you want to do a bit of reading yourself on the science, I will drop a link in the description below. A simple search of R value temperatures will bring you up loads of charts, which will give you a little bit of an idea of temperature ranges. So what is the actual difference between these two pads? They just look like they're made of some kind of nylon. Very similar materials, but the appearance and the outer material is probably where the similarities end. So I need to do a quick pause to thank Squarespace for sponsoring the video today. So building a website of your own really doesn't have to be a daunting task. Squarespace have a boatload of templates, which makes it really easy. All you have to do is drag in a few photos, add whatever text you want, and before you know it, you've built a website. Whether you want to write gear reviews on sleeping pads, share your YouTube videos, or set up your own little shop, then Squarespace has got something for you. Also, if you click the link in the description below, you'll get a totally free trial so you can set up the website, see what it looks like before you decide to buy. And then when you're ready to go live, you'll get 10% off your first order. So inside the cheaper pads, like this Trekology, you've just got a huge pocket of air, and that air eventually will start to get cold. So when you go to sleep at night, you'll start to lose heat through this air pocket in the pad due to conduction. So the cold ground below and your body on top will try to equalise, and you don't actually win that battle. you start to get cold because you're never going to heat up the Earth's surface. So some of the more expensive pads like the Sea to Summit or your Thermarest, they will have some sort of technology inside that will try and keep you insulated from the ground. So unlike the Trekology, there's a little bit more in there than air. So if I was to cut open this pad, which I'm not going to do by the way, you would find a thin metallic layer inside the pad, which Sea to Summit have called X-Skin Platinum, and that would help reflect your body heat back up to you and stop you losing heat to the ground. So in addition to that, they've added something called Thermalite, which is a high loft fibre, and that will help fill these air pockets and give you that little bit more insulation. So those two bits of technology paired up together make for a really well insulated sleeping pad. So you might say to me, you've got a really good sleeping bag, you've paid a couple £100 and it is rated down to -10 degrees, so you should be perfectly fine in below freezing temperatures on the cheaper sleeping pad. But the reality is that all that insulation from your sleeping pad is going to get squashed flat when you're laid on it, so you may as well be sleeping just directly on this pad, you know, with nothing under your back. So eventually you are still going to feel the cold and your sleeping pad won't be as efficient as you thought it was. And at the other end of the spectrum, you can get away with a lesser rating sleeping bag if you are using a higher rated sleeping pad. So if you're in a tent and you're protected by the outside elements, you're going to lose most of your heat through the floor. So if that is catered for with a really high value sleeping pad, you don't always need to have the highest rating sleeping bag. There's been many a times where I've had to kick my quilt off or my sleeping bag off when I've been using a really good sleeping pad. So what if your budget is the £40 sleeping pad and not the more expensive ones you can buy? Well, you can improve the R value of your sleeping pad by layering up. So if you get yourself a closed cell foam mat, something like this Z-Lite, put that underneath your cheaper air pad, you've got the best of both worlds with the comfort of this air mattress, and you're also getting the R value from this plus the R value from the sleeping pad as well, sleeping mat as well. So in theory you could be getting down to some of the lower temperatures using a combination of the two. The only real problem with that is when you've got a full size sleeping mat anyway, you're going to have something bulky that's either going to take up a lot of room in your pack, or you're going to have to strap this onto the outside. So when it comes to camping gear, in my opinion, the sleeping pad is one of the most important areas when it comes to spending a little bit more money. You can get some really good sleeping pads that are insulated for about 60 or 70 quid. But if you only want to spend 30 or 40 quid, then I would recommend the UL80. However, I would pair it up with a closed cell foam mat to give you that little bit more insulation. So I hope you found this video useful. I'll leave links in the description below to both these items and a bit more information on R values. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.